Hello and welcome to the African Diaspora News Channel. I am Marilyn Couch. On the 15th of February, South African students were expected to return back to school after the COVID-19 global pandemic. However, were told to go back home or rejected due to their parents being unable to pay registration fees for new learners entering into the schooling system or re-registration fees for learners who were returning back to school. According to the South African Department of Education, it has been inundated with calls from South African parents who have been calling in to vent their frustration. Parents have also used other social platforms such as Facebook and news media to vent their frustrations. According to an article released by the South African Parent 24, parents have been venting on Facebook, stating that they've had to pay re-registration fees ranging from 200 to 3,000 Rand out of fear that their child might lose a space within the South African schooling system. I'm going to be addressing two issues. Firstly, the South African funding of South African schools, and secondly, the South African Constitution pertaining to a child's right to education. Just for clarity purposes, a South African school or public school is a school that is funded solely from the government, and so it relies solely on government funding in order to operate. A private school is a separate entity and therefore has its own funding structure and will be left out of this discussion, and my focus will be primarily on South African government-owned schools. The South African Constitution is one of the most progressive constitutions in the world and enjoys high acclaim internationally. Firstly, the practice of charging registration fees and turning scholars away from education, not from the school, but from education, is an illegal act. According to Article 29 of the Bill of Rights of the South African Constitution, everyone has a right to basic education. Therefore, the exclusion or the lack of access to education by these kids speaks directly to a violation of the South African Constitution and the Bill of Rights for a child to attend school. The South African Constitution is the supreme law of the land. No other government can supersede the provisions of the Constitution, which means school admission policies cannot supersede the supreme law of the land, and therefore enforcing registration fees and depriving these children of education is illegal. The South African Basic Education Policy states, no one registering at a state school can be charged a registration fee nor required to pay any fees up front. There are children who are supposed to be rightfully receiving an education who are currently sitting at home and being deprived of their right to basic education. Despite firstly what the South African Constitution states, everyone has a right to basic education, and secondly what the basic education policy states, no one registering at a state school can be charged a registration fee. The bigger issue here is that it is always the most vulnerable children who are exposed and bear the brunt of these situations. Public schools are mostly placed within townships and communities, which have already been marginalized by the South African government in terms of resources and opportunities. And within these communities, they've already been subjected to conditions or environments of substance abuse, violence, and gangsterism. And now, by depriving them of their education, it means that they are either left at home unsupervised or being neglected, and so they are further drawn into these toxic cycles. Due to parents being unable to pay these illegal registration and re-registration fees, schools are now accepting students from external communities in order to fill spots within the school, possibly because these parents have the finances to pay these registration and re-registration fees. This again contravenes the South African Basic Education Policy, which states, where possible, a child should be given access to a school within 5 kilometers of their home. In some provinces, the government is meant to assist these learners who live further than 5 kilometers from the school. The issue is that A school is strategically placed within a community for its purpose to accommodate the learners who live within that community. So by accepting external students, it means that these children within these communities have nowhere to go. So they would have to look externally as well to find a school to accommodate them. However, if their parents don't have registration fees and they apply at schools that are implementing the illegal admission fee, then it means that they will not receive an education. Also, how are these learners supposed to transport themselves to school every day if their parents cannot even afford registration fees? What happens to these learners who are now sitting at home and have nowhere to go and have no school to attend? The South African education policy states that a child should be in school and receiving their basic right to education, irrespective if fees have been paid or not. Some guidelines to parents who are now in the struggle of having to deal with a child who is not receiving basic education. You may go to your local school and ask the principal of that school if it has been declared full by the South African Education Department. You may then request from the principal a letter from the Education Department. The South African education policy states that a child should be in school and receiving their basic right to education, irrespective of whether school fees have been paid or not. Some guidelines to assist parents who have children who are now stuck at home and not receiving their right to basic education. You may go to your local school and ask the principal of that school if it has been declared full by the South African Education Department. You may then request a letter from the principal that has been received by the Education Department stating that that school has been declared full. If there is no letter, it means that the Education Department has not regarded that school as full, and so your child must be accepted. If the school still refuses or doesn't want to show you the letter, then you may contact the local district office to assist the learner. If the school does have a letter stating that it is currently full, then the onus or the responsibility lies on the South African Education Department to locate their child within a school that is nearest to its community. The South African Department of Education has cautioned schools by sending out an urgent public notice to refrain from charging parents these illegal registration and re-registration fees and notifying parents that they are not legally bound to pay these fees. As a suggestion to schools who are struggling financially and to parents who are currently unemployed, it would be of great assistance to these schools if you could volunteer your services in terms of assisting in school maintenance. So that would mean helping to assist clean the school or cut the grass or whatever it is that the school requires. In this way, the school can save on costs in terms of having to hire out a contractor in order to come in to clean the school or to cut the school grass. African Diaspora News Channel, Marilyn Couch.